Throughout the evening, we'll be adding 3 new names to the PPAI's illustrious Hall of Fame. This award is so special because it gives us a chance to recognize individuals who've dedicated the better part of their lives to the industry and to PPAI. It will be an honor to share the stage with them tonight. To announce our first Hall of Fame inductee, please welcome Steve Slagle, CAE.
Good evening. I am very proud to help induct Bob Burnham into our Hall of Fame. His story is very special, from his arrival in the United States to his success in the promotional products industry. He was an active supporter of the Advertising Specialty Guild and the Advertising Specialty National Association, predecessor organizations to PPAI. He served on the board of the Writing Instrument Manufacturers Association, where he worked successfully to influence favorable government regulations on imported pen components. Bob Burnham was much more than an entrepreneur, an inventor, and craftsman. He impressed his customers with his service, his peers with his innovations, and his employees with his empathy and his generosity. Let's watch.
Robert J. Burnham came to the United States in 1938, leaving his homeland of Austria under the threat of Nazi occupation. Arriving in a wave of pre-war immigration, Burnham was inspired by the wide-open possibilities of the American dream. The young immigrant in his early 20s and barely speaking the language was too dazzled by the city of New York to be intimidated by it. Burnham embraced his new home and applied for citizenship. America had entered World War II, and the young Austrian immigrant, eager to do his part, enlisted in the service. Within 3 years of arriving in America, Robert Burnham was an Army intelligence officer, decoding and translating messages during the London Blitz. He returned to New York and drew on the experience he'd gained working for his father's stationery company in Austria. He had inherited his father's entrepreneurial spirit, and Robert Burnham was determined to succeed. By 1947, he had established the Burnham Products Corporation, selling fountain pens and pen parts. Always an innovator, Robert Burnham sought out and adopted new technology and automation. He's remembered as the founding father of the inexpensive, reliable ballpoint pen. Burnham's quality pens caught the attention of promotional products distributors. He soon became involved with the Specialty Advertising Association and distinguished himself as an outstanding supplier and dedicated member. Burnham never missed an industry trade show and was an avid supporter of the association's education program. He enrolled his senior executives in the very first Certified Advertising Specialist classes, earning his own CAS designation in 1978. There are many reasons to remember Robert Burnham and celebrate his career. His innovations and contributions to the industry and to the PPAI are still relevant today. However, to fully appreciate his legacy, we must also remember his character and his passion. He is recognized for his loyalty and integrity as much as he is for his business achievements. Robert J. Burnham represents the very best of our industry, and it is with pride and gratitude that we add his name to the PPAI Hall of Fame.
Ladies and gentlemen, we were very sad to lose Bob Burnham in 1987. His legacy and our memories of him are still very much alive. But no one can tell you about Bob Burnham's life and his contributions with more eloquence than his own son. Accepting the PPAI Hall of Fame Award tonight for Bob Burnham, please welcome his son, Dennis Burnham, MAS. I'll hold your award for you. Okay.
First, I want to thank Glenn Holt and Barry Chase, who first proposed this honor for my father 10 years ago. and to Bill Bywater and Mark Gilman for their good advice last year on the nomination process. And without the dozens of seconding letters I received from my father's surviving contemporaries, we would not be here honoring him tonight. As I'm not the one being recognized tonight, the best thing I can do is say some things in public in tribute to my father, beginning with what he taught me about the truth, about family business, and about competition. First and foremost was the lesson about speaking out and telling the truth, whether or not it's popular. He wanted me to find the delicate balance between the wisdom of the German pastor Niemöller about having the courage to speak out before it's too late, or Mark Twain's quote, "It's better to be silent and thought a fool than to speak up and remove all doubt." I think one of the biggest disappointments in my adult life is the failure of my generation to change things. For instance, the president of Iran is 6 years younger than I am, and less than a month ago there was a conference he hosted to rewrite history and promote more ethnic cleansing. My father would be telling you, if he were here tonight, that there hasn't been enough speaking out against hatred and genocide, whether it's in Darfur or China or Bosnia or Afghanistan, or even in our own country where there were still over 800 active hate groups last year. And because some of the prejudice we see at home is directed these days towards immigrants, I'm proud to call your attention to the fact that Bob Burnham is the very first supplier in our Hall of Fame who immigrated to the United States. He joins our friend Carl Rosenfeld. Carl Rosenfeld also fled Europe before World War II to start a new life and become an American citizen, as the only other immigrant that we've recognized with this honor. When Carl once told me after selling his company to Ed Johnson that he needed a place to be, he was talking about his job and his unwillingness to retire, a characteristic that he shared with my dad. Well, for both of them, I think the Hall of Fame is the perfect place to be. It respects their legacies as European, Jewish, refugee, 20th century specialty advertising success stories. As my father was a respected role model to hundreds of immigrants from Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America who became his employees, I really hope that his legacy in the Hall of Fame will inspire people of other nationalities whose faces and foreign accents are more visible in our industry today than ever before. On my way to a peace rally in Washington the week after the Kent State murders in May 1970, my father asked me if I would want to come to work at Everglide after college. I remember how quickly I said, "No way." And just as fast he said, "Well, suppose I quit and we start a new business together." Well, 4 days later, Scripto fired him, and then 4 months later, that new business was formed. It's not just the untold part of the story of how I got here that makes me recall that moment for you. I really wanted to resonate for those of you who followed your father or your mother in business. Not until many years later, after I learned the difficulty of getting an appointment with an important client, did I appreciate that the only reason somebody like Bob Waldorf welcomed me into his office 34 years ago was because I happened to be Bob Burnham's son. As a son or a daughter in business, I think that you really haven't earned your privileged position until you can acknowledge the fact that you never had to fill out an application form. And the truth is that many of us got the opportunity to share in the success of a family business just by inheriting one thing: our parents' love. With some luck and some hard work, we may have earned their respect long after they handed us that opportunity. But in your entire life, you never have anybody or anything that's as constant as the love of your own parents. So before I leave the subject of successful fathers and their sons, I also want to take this opportunity to salute both Dan Bagleys, Jr. and Sr. My father loved the spirit of competition, and he enjoyed the respect of his competitors. People like Harry Rosenberg, Bert Strauss, Bob Yaw, Bob Perlmutter, Milt Cooper, Fred Coble, so many others. He taught me that you can't be number one without a group of rivals chasing you, keeping you on your toes, always motivating you to improve yourself and your company to maintain your lead. Growing up in the pen business, I couldn't distinguish between my dad's customers and his competitors because he kept friendships with all of them. So I'm really delighted to see my father honored tonight alongside one of his favorite competitors, Lorraine Hempin. Also tonight, one of my guests is a 17-year-old young lady who never got to meet her grandfather. And he never got to meet her, but she's getting to be introduced to him tonight, along with what is a very big fan club. Also yesterday, I was recalling one of the stories that my dad used to tell when he opened sales meetings, and Wayne Greenberg told me that I could take an extra minute to tell this story, so I'm going to do it tonight. He was always looking for new markets, and one of them he found was the souvenir trade. And we used to get these orders in the pen business from somebody in Tennessee who sent us orders for pens after Elvis Presley died. His name, his date of birth and death, a little picture of a guitar. Every couple of weeks, another 250 pens. And then he started to send us orders for Bing Crosby pens when Bing Crosby died. And it seemed like the guy was following the obituaries and seeing anytime somebody famous died, he would give us another order for pens. One day, my dad came into my office and he said to me, "I don't think we're going to be getting any of those orders anymore." And I wondered what happened, why not? And he said, "Well, this fellow, Mr. Parkhurst, he passed away." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" And he said, "Well, he's ordering samples with his own imprint." Well, I want to close and tell you that my sister, who's here tonight, she and I are very grateful to the association for this distinct honor. For those of you in the audience who never met my father, it's really my privilege to introduce him to you this evening. And for those of you who did know him and recall him fondly, please come meet my sister before you leave tonight, because when you see the smile on her face and the twinkle in her eye, it'll remind you what it was like to share a handshake or a hug with my dad. Thank you very much.
Look, yours, not mine.
Okay, thank you.
Really good. Congratulations.
Thanks, Steve.
Let's go back this way.
Okay.
We also talked with Dennis Burnham about his father, Robert Burnham, who was inducted posthumously, and he spoke fondly about his father's involvement in the promotional products industry.
He had fun doing it. Honesty and integrity were really important hallmarks. He had the blessing of this European accent and charm that always got him out of trouble. I couldn't do it that way. You know, in the South, they say if somebody has a problem and they do a shuffle to kind of repair the damage. And if my dad did a shuffle, people saw the Blue Danube Waltz. But I guess the thing that would make me proudest is that wherever I went, if I had a reason to call on a distributor, make an appointment, it was my last name that got me in the door. And I may not have realized that until a few years went by. But it's important to acknowledge that. And I think it's important for a lot of other sons and daughters who come into family business to know that they are lucky enough to have the positions they have sometimes because their parents love them. And that's something to be proud of and to respect.